So our next Haslab item has finally been revealed to us, and quite a surprise it was. I personally was hoping for a Primus, as this video will clearly show. What a surprise it was. I think everyone was under the impression that we weren't going to get an Optimus Prime, especially for the 40th anniversary Haslab item. But I've got to say, I am pleasantly surprised by it, and I have ordered 2 for myself. Since that figure won't be coming out till potentially next year, we're going to take a look at the next best thing that we do have available to us, that being the original 2001 RID Optimus Prime. And here we have RID 2001 Optimus Prime in his fire truck mode, or if you're from the eastern side, you'll remember this as Fire Convoy, which for me personally is a far better name for this version of Prime. It is a beautiful, beautiful fire truck mode. Absolutely gorgeous. I will mention he does come with lights and sounds in this version. However, I have not checked the battery compartment in a few years. Yeah, this guy was boxed when I first got him, so everything's complete. Everything is lovely. All the chrome is very, very nice on this guy. And the rubber tyres are surprisingly in good nick too. Unfortunately, a lot of versions that you will see secondhand, the tyres will either be completely missing or cracked. Of course, rubber does not last forever, especially on toys. But an absolutely gorgeous representation of the actual fire truck mode, which is based on a real car, just like the majority of the Autobots from Carl Robots line. But yeah, absolutely gorgeous red fire truck. Of course, there are a few things that you can do in this fire truck mode, of course, one being the lights and sounds, which are just located here. There's a button on top here, your battery compartment's just in there, and your sound box is just there. But you can maneuver the ladder around, and this will also rotate on a nice clean ratchet, and if you want, it can even extend, so you've got quite a bit of reach on that. There is one last thing that you can do, which is just on the end here. Press down a button and it just releases these 2 nozzles, which completes the look. And it can get a bit weighty when the full piece is extended, but you can also maneuver this end piece around however you like, which is more for transformation for later, but we will get into that when we get into it. But yeah, it is a lovely, lovely fire truck mode. I will say this, I have my weapon storage down here. I just find it easier to have his little pistol down here. I know that Lockdown isn't a massive fan of having the wheels down here, as he stated in his video. For me, I just think it's easier to have it down there. So we're going to go ahead and split this guy so that we can go into a couple of different modes. So these are quite tight. There we go. Just pull off the front cab section and we'll put that off to the side while we get into base mode. So to go into base mode, you will need this part, the back section of the fire truck. You'll need to unclip pretty much everything apart, which these are just on C-clips, and quite tough C-clips too. But they are also supported by a little peg there, just for support. So we are going to extend this section up. You can then flip out these. You can then pop those 2 pieces out like so, and that is pretty much the towel section. You can then fold out this piece, which just becomes the crotch plate in combine mode. You can then come to the arms. I'm just going to let that fall back. Spread these out as if you were going into another mode that we will get into, and then you want to rotate these guns, fold out the thumb, and then just position them like so. You can then find the corresponding side. This peg will go into that port there, and that will just tab on like so. And then it will tab into a tab just up there, which, like I said, this thing isn't the most stable, and there's not really any way of getting this guy to stand. I think the only best way you can try and get this to stand better is by folding these bits in, these wheels in, and then extending the combined mode feet, but even then I don't think it gives you much in the way of stability. Well, it seems to be holding better. So we are going to finish off the base mode. If I can remember which way everything goes. And pop that just on like that. And here we have Prime's base mode, which is certainly an interesting piece. It's certainly tall. I'll be honest, this is definitely one of those base modes that is a secondary thought, and you don't really need to pay much mind to it. It's just there, it does a thing. It's a 2000s base mode. Yeah, I'm going to pop this to one side. We'll get into the transformation for Prime. At this point with transformations, I feel like I repeat myself, but the transformation is very, very nice on the core robot. Twist out those legs from the core of the abdomen, flip out the feet, and then just flip out the arms. Very, very nice, and then just crunch everything down. Very simple, very satisfying. And here we have Prime's core robot mode, and I've got to say, it is quite a clever use of the front cab section for the main robot. It really is something that you would not expect to see, especially for an early 2000s toy. I mean, you can kind of see it happening. It was par the course for Prime figures to have a sort of standard robot mode and then a super robot mode. But this is certainly something different. The fact that it is just the front section of that fire truck that does turn into the robot mode, it's certainly interesting. I've got to say, I do quite like these metallic painted faux windows. They certainly look really nice, and the chrome done for his abs and chest is really, really nice. A lot of the painted detail is done in metallic paint, like the blue and the silver, as well as the yellow highlights that are just in on his kneecaps. Honestly, it is a really, really nice and really well done figure. And I am very much glad that they are revisiting this, because it is certainly an interesting design. One thing I will say is the ball joints for the feet are very, very loose. That could just be my copy. I mean, it's trying to fall over. That's certainly one thing I will say about this figure, and especially the Magnus combination. When it comes down to stability, it does not have it. But in terms of the actual build of the figure, it's not bad. I mean, even his backpack's very, very minimal. And I don't quite understand why it does that, because it doesn't really do anything for combined mode. Just an added hinge, I suppose. I suppose it's just to get into the electrical compartment. But it is a very nice looking base robot mode. I mean, even the head sculpt for it is something different. He has got really, really glossy orange eyes, and you can probably notice his ear guards do rotate. I like to have mine just slightly pointed back, as he did in the original animation. But everything you would expect from a Prime is pretty much here. Right from the crest, the eyes, the mouth guard. It is just a Prime through and through. The white on this is a bit of like a milky white, which, if you've followed my channel, I'm not a fan of that milky white. It's weird. It only really works if it's for bone or like an animal based transformer, but anything outside of that, it just feels weird. But anyway, articulation wise for this guy, his head is on a ball joint, so you can get some nice motion for the head. His shoulders are on a bit of a butterfly joint, which is mainly for transformation. He's got ratcheted shoulders which go 90 degrees. He's also got a bicep swivel and a 90-degree bend at his elbow. His hands can rotate, but they are fairly stiff and I wouldn't recommend it. They are annoying. His waist does rotate, which is surprising for a figure that does that, which wanted to. I suppose you could try to get an ab crunch, except he's going to end up a little weird, but you can get an ab crunch if you wanted to. His hips can go out about that far before they get hit on the skirt guards. The legs can go out quite far though, back and forth. He does not have a rotation at the upper thigh, but at the lower knee, with a lovely bend which can break his legs, as we like to do here. Like I said, his feet are on a ball joint which are not very tight, so I may have to take those off and just give them a little bit of a tighten up. That is pretty much the base Prime figure, other than the fact that his gun is very, very tiny, and this is pretty much the only time you will see this gun. It does stand quite well next to it, but let's face it, you're not really going to display Prime in this mode. So let's get into the thing that we're all here for, the combine mode. To get into combine mode, it is just a case of collapsing the head down, just spreading everything out so you can get all the parts, dismantle the base mode, and then it is just very, very simple, just plugging every single piece onto the core robot. There's not really much else that I can say for this transformation. It's just very satisfying to click everything. Yes, it is parts forming, but it's parts forming done gracefully, which is certainly a nice thing to see. I will say this, there are a few areas where it can get a little bit annoying, especially with the shoulder pads, which you'll see in a minute. When trying to attach those, they don't actually have anywhere to attach to, and this head section, you'll see that I'm having a little bit of trouble with this. It's just getting all of the tabs or all of the posts lined up with the ports, and it can be a little bit of a struggle, but once it's in, it doesn't necessarily stay in, but it certainly holds better. So yeah, now we come to those shoulder sections and they just rest on top, which is nice, but I wish they clicked in a bit better. And here we have Prime Super Mode. I'll be honest, this thing does look cool, but man, is that ladder section just hanging off of him. It is pretty much just being used as a tripod at this stage, just to keep him up, because as soon as I move that to show you something else that this character can do, yeah, he hasn't exactly got the best stabilization for the combine mode. Combination is fun, but man, that section with the head and the chest, that's not fun whatsoever. That was very irritating to try and get everything lined up. It could just be me trying to transform it from behind a camera, but yeah, it's an interesting one, so hopefully that will be cleaned up for the future. But anyway, the actual combine mode looks absolutely fantastic. It is really nicely painted with the yellow stripe going across the chest, the nice silver highlights, blue highlights, again with those yellow highlights as well. It just ties the figure together, and again with those orange eyes, it just looks fantastic in this mode. It is pretty much just balancing on that back section there, because if I move this all the way over, you'll see that, oh, he actually does want to stand. Okay, that's different. Normally he just falls straight back. Yeah, normally he'll just fall over because the weight on this guy is ridiculous. He is quite a chunky boy, but he is also quite a flimsy boy. Prime example there. The connections for the combine mode are not the most secure. However, once they are tabbed in and he is on the shelf, they do certainly stay put for the most part. Like I said, that head section, chest section is not exactly the easiest to keep tabbed and to mess around with to get tabbed, but it is certainly an interesting design for a Super Optimus Prime. He does have his own energy matrix, which if you just lift that up, you get access to the matrix itself, as well as a little, I can only assume, scanner section. So that is definitely a cool little added detail to include for this guy. Articulation wise, not much has changed on this guy. It is very much the same articulation, just with a few hindrances here and there, like with the shoulders. The hands, you do get a ball joint, so you can get a little bit of articulation there. And yeah, it does kind of look like he's just wearing a big boxing glove. But you can pose the hands however you like, so that's at least something added to it. You do lose the ankle tilt on the feet, but you do gain bigger feet if that's a consolation prize. His head is on a very weird universal, so two hinges that don't really work well together, so he can just about nod up and down and he can turn his head. But other than that, you're not really going to get much from him. Of course, you can see the gun just hiding up there. That's just how I like to store the gun on this guy. I just find it easier to be up there. But let's get into the main feature for the combined mode. So if we turn all of this over, I was going to showcase this in vehicle mode. However, I think it looks a bit better with combined mode. So this ladder section can act as an over-the-shoulder cannon with these parts out if you so wanted to. I wouldn't recommend extending it because it will just collapse forward, and let's face it, we don't want that. However, there is a button just on the back here that if you press, these missiles will come out. You know what, that's pretty cool. To see a Prime tooled up that much that's meant to be for search and rescue it is a little bit concerning, but at the same time it's pretty cool. Yeah, this thing's just a pretty cool figure. It's just a shame that he doesn't hold that well together, and probably one of the main problems for this figure is that midriff section. It just does not hold all that well. I mean, this is about as stable as you're going to get it, but if you want height on the figure, you've got to extend it, and he's just wobbly. So it's very much a give and take with this figure, especially when it comes down to the combined mode. But it is one hell of a combined mode.
Whoa, Inferno, you look different. Have you grown?
Prime, that's not Inferno. That's you from a different universe.
You mean this guy's me? But he doesn't look anything like me. He doesn't even look like he turns into a truck.
He turns into a fire engine. You just called him Inferno. So therefore he turns into some form of a truck.
But I bet he doesn't even have a matrix.
He does have a matrix. Look, I know that he's different to what you consider a Prime, but this guy's pretty old school, especially in comparison to you.
Well, okay, but I hope he doesn't try and murder me like the last Prime.
I doubt he'll do that. I'm sure he's a big softie.
For your sake, I hope you're right.
As far as Optimus Primes go from the early 2000s, the 2001 RID Prime has certainly got one hell of an interesting design. Utilising the front cab section for the core robot and using the rest of the figure for the combined mode as well as a base mode is pretty cool. And I can't wait to see what they actually do with that Haslab that we have finally completed the 10,000 backers for. I just hope that they do fix those issues like with the combined mode ab section, because let's face it, as much as this guy's cool, he's not exactly the most stable, but we can hope, and from what we've been told, those issues will be cleared, which is fantastic. And I can't wait to see what they actually do with that Haslab variant and what we might get for 20,000 backers if we hit it. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, and I will see you guys for the Valentine's special. I'll see you guys then.